This is Father Gregory Pine.
This is Father Patrick Briscoe.
This is Father Joseph Anthony Kress.
And this is Father Jacob-Bertrand Janczyk.
And this is Father Bonaventure Chapman.
Nailed it. And
Let's
welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks to all those who support us. If you enjoy the show, please consider making a monthly donation on Patreon. Be sure to like and subscribe to Godsplaining wherever you listen to your podcasts. So it's time-honored tradition of the Godsplaining podcast to host an episode on our anniversary. Not our anniversary of profession or of ordination, but our anniversary of having started the podcast. Last year, we entitled it St. Dominic and the Rosary, and we talked about neither St. Dominic nor the Rosary. So we're going to title this one on perambulating in retirement homes, and we're actually going to talk about that the whole time. But 5 years. Okay, so, brethren, let us be attentive. 5 years. Any thoughts on 5 years / random associations / things that have to do with the number 5? Father Bonaventure?
Cheeseburgers on the moon.
We've been doing Godsplaining longer than it takes to get through college.
Yeah.
It depends on who.
It depends on like what you.
You could say we provided a college education already, basically accredited. Godsplaining you, university splaining. Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe college splaining. University, we don't offer doctorates yet. It's like an 8-year program.
I like Godsplaining you. It's like PragerU, but with habits.
Or like Claritas U, except less apologetic and more hijinksy. Father Joseph Anthony, as an expert in educational administration, do you think that Godsplaining should be accredited today or tomorrow?
I think it should have been accredited yesterday, actually. Like we should. This has been a long-standing institution, I think, at 5 years now. It is credible, and I think that the education you can receive by listening to these podcasts is, much more, much more applicable and usable for your daily life than going in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt only to go into grad school.
Be.
So that's my
Although
thought
the
on
technology
it.
stuff isn't as good.
I think it is.
at some
I think we should have been
universities.
accredited yesterday.
I think we should award every listener that's been listening since the first episode with an honorary Godsplaining doctorate.
Honoris causa.
Honoris causa.
And they can all make a speech.
No, I think it should be. I think it should be an associate's degree, honoris causa. or maybe get this even better, a certificate honoris causa. That's basically what we could offer is a certificate honoris causa.
Yes. So, Father Joseph Anthony, having set us up well for our academic accreditation process, we thank you for that. But here we are, reflecting in our dotage on the many years that have passed as we approach the end of our lives at varying speeds, depending on whether or not we text and drive. That would be at the highest rate. But we thought that in this time together, we could recount some highlights, some fun lights, and some hope lights. And the chances that we remember all those different lights and the appropriate prefixes are low. So my suspicion is that this will become all of the lights. And we'd like to thank our corporate sponsor for providing that title. So leading us into highlights, Father Patrick, thoughts?
I have to say that my highlight is still absolutely getting this thing off the ground. Because, I had like scissors, 2 empty tin cans, a piece of string, some tape, and a dream. And that is how Godsplaining was born. So some listeners have heard the story before, but initially we recorded the first episode. We had set a bunch of stuff up, and then out of some sheer panic, I didn't in fact post the episode. And Father Gregory encouraged me and said full send, and then we posted it on the Feast of St. Dominic. We've been going ever since. I mean, so for me, the beginning was the highlight, and it's just been. Yeah, I don't want to
uphill from there.
No, but that was really a great moment.
Nice. All right. Well, in light of Father Patrick's revisionist history of Godsplaining, we have been gradually declining in quality ever since the outset. So sorry, folks, that we have wasted your time for a period here of 5 years, but perhaps to give an alternate edition of the things that transpired. Father Jacob-Bertrand, any highlights, preferably ones that take place after 2019
What was 2019?
when we started it?
Oh, yeah. My bad. I'm sorry. I apologize if I sound weird on the podcast to those listening. I'm in the midst of the flu, which is awesome. So that's great. Highlight, fun light, and hope light all together. Nothing like a spring flu to really get you out of bed. Okay, so kind of a hot take, probably not something you would expect me to say, but I think the highlight of Godsplaining thus far has actually been the Camino, which I know everybody's face. There you go. If you're watching on YouTube's, yeah, I think so. Partly true because there were a lot of good things about it, but also partly time because a lot of time has passed such that I can now be like, oh yeah, remember when that great experience happened? But seriously, I think the Camino was one of those is a highlight. You know, if you were like quick highlight, I would think Camino kind of stands out as one of those. So that's what I'm going to throw out there.
The Student Brothers have a distinction, which I haven't heard before, between Type 1 and Type 2 fun. And Type 1 fun is first level, first order fun, like bowling.
I hate bowling.
And Type 2 fun is the kind of fun that first order is not fun, but when reflecting upon becomes like something you enjoyed. You take a second, it's like a meta fun. So the Camino is like Type 2 fun would be, we went hiking, we ran out of stuff, and it was really dicey at points and really frustrating, but wow, we made it. And for the Camino, it sounds like that's Type 2 fun, right, for you? Maybe Type 1 and 2 fun for Father Gregory?
Maybe. It's definitely... So one, bowling is awful. Sorry if you like bowling. Bowling is miserable.
Type 0 fun.
Like wearing someone else's dirty, sweaty shoes. Like what other sport do you wear other people's used shoes? That's awful.
Ballet.
No. No. But yeah, it's maybe Type 2. There was some Type 1 fun, but that would be my highlight over the past 5 years, I guess. So
wild. Yeah, I think I might say a similar thing. My experience of the Camino obviously was a lot like yours insofar as we were in lockstep, except when we weren't in lockstep. But like wildly enough, my positive experiences on the Camino were all kind of unforeseen / unplanned. It was like we squatted up with a group of 18 people who were awesome, with whom we spent a lot of time. But then it was like meeting all of these people who were on the Camino, just kind of getting broken open by the experience, and were on some spirit quest. And I was like, wow, what's going on here? So those were like highlights within the highlights. It's like when you dye your hair and then the roots grow out, and then you dye it again, and then the roots grow out. I don't actually know if that's applicable. But Father Joseph Anthony, any highlights, whether it concerns the coloring of hair or the living of your podcast life?
Yeah, I think over the last 5 years, am I muted?
Father Joseph Anthony, I can't hear you. I don't know if the other people can.
Can you hear me now? Yes, no, maybe.
Nope, he's going to work it though.
Oh no.
While he's doing that, he'll talk over me. Notice this. This is a part of the cool part about Godsplaining. So this is a cup. That's not exceptional, but it has a bunch of philosophers on it. So you can see this and it has, let's see, I don't know, about 60 of these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows and about like 10 columns, 50 maybe. Yeah, 50, 60, it's hard to say. Anyway, only the top row. So only the top row has anyone before 1600 on it. So there's 5 rows of philosophers here. And only the top row top row is like from the creation of the world until Thomas Aquinas. And then we jump down to the next level and we've got Hume and Voltaire, Machiavelli, Bacon. I mean, look, we're just rocking here.
Yeah.
I mean, and does Philip Foot really deserve to be on the same cup as like Plato? I mean, so what Godsplaining does, I think, help a little bit is to get a sense of like the sense that the medievals are, and still has something to say and this kind of stuff. And that, this kind of nonsense can start to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would identify that as one of the tertiary goals of Godsplaining. I think we've got several primary and secondary goals, which may outpace the relativization of Philippa Foot's philosophical contribution. But back to highlights. Father Joseph Anthony, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm back. Hopefully I stay live here. I'm having technical difficulties, which is beautiful. Yeah, I think one of the highlights was when we did our live episode at Seek. We've done 2 of those now, but the first one that we did in Seek was really eye-opening and humbling in a lot of ways because we had such a great crowd. We had a lot of people who were dedicated fans, and getting a chance to encounter them in that venue was a real humbling experience and kind of eye-opening to see, this random project that started with some string, tin cans, and scissors now has blown up in such a huge way. So those live episodes at Seek for the last 2 years were really awesome and definite highlights for me, for sure.
Yes. Speaking of the flu, I definitely had the flu during the second one.
Yeah.
And so it was like a combination of being underwater / inside a hollow conductor during a lightning storm. But the vibes were immaculate nevertheless. I just couldn't experience them except at a distance. Lest this episode become 1,000 years long, I'm thinking that we might jump to Funlights, insofar as Father Bonaventure is kind of a resident expert in Funlights and the narrating thereof. I was hoping that you might recount for us one of your Funlights.
He's a funosaurus.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Great point.
Love that.
There's
yeah.
72 philosophers on that cup. Can you believe that? The 12 of them are from like in the 1600s covers the other 60. I mean, it just blows my mind. Fun events. Yeah. So fun events. So I got 3 cane toads.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun.
That is.
So, and the problem with cane toads, which is great. Whoever's listening to this, really appreciate that. Love cane toads. But here's the thing, because I'm kind of a legalist in a way, not like in personal morality and
Kind
stuff.
of?
Like, you do what
in
you
a
want.
way?
But in a virtuous sense, like I choose to be a legalist, but
Yeah, dude.
if you're not a legalist, you ought not to be.
No, the law binds you to be a legalist.
Well, I choose to make it to bind me. That's what it means to be free. Right. So the thing is, cane toads are an invasive species, so you can't release them anywhere. I also like toads, so I can't kill them. I also don't know where they're from, so it's hard to know where to send them. I don't think I'm allowed to give them to anyone. So it's a weird dilemma that I've been just kind of like sitting in, and I'm kind of just hoping they die. But I don't mean to bring about their death, so it's a sort of intention foreseen distinction that might be involved.
Yeah.
So, but it was pretty exciting when one of our friars here sent me a picture and said, "Hey, there's live reptiles in the mailroom for you." And I took this box and I had to teach a class right away, so I just took it over to me with the class and just set it on the table as I was teaching. And no one noticed. We were doing something important, so it didn't. But until like later, they said, "What's that?" And I said, "I think it's live reptiles." It says it's live reptiles.
Yeah.
So I opened it up, and there they were, toads. And then it only dawned on me when reading the label that these were indeed cane toads, which I momentarily I saw all things in the mind of God for a second. I thought, "Cool. Oh no, what do I do?" So anyway, that was pretty fun. I'll have to admit, it was fun to get cane toads. It's sort of type 1 fun, and then it's tricky about what to do with them.
Is that type 3 fun?
Yeah,
tricky
that's it.
fun?
Yeah, it might not even be fun. It might just be like moral dilemma. Then it falls to deep sadness as I step on some toads that I love. But I'm trying not to get to know them so that I can do that when I have to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Man, things got grisly there. So thanks for expanding the category of fun lights to include moral dilemmas and grisly departures. So Father Jacob-Bertrand, with the limits of fun lights now set in such exciting and somewhat ambiguous fashion, do you have a fun light that you can pick out from the last 5 years?
I don't know if I understand the distinction between a highlight and a fun light, to be honest.
You certainly
like a weird
wouldn't.
light.
But I think a fun light that I didn't participate in, at least not direct. I know a fun light was our, what was it? Boats and boating episode. So for those who don't have the sort of behind the scenes scoop into how we decide our content, it's very scientific in that we just kind of have a video call like this and just kind of throw out episode ideas and then kind of assign things. And who was the boating and boats and boating? That was what, Father Patrick and Father Bonaventure?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There was somebody who was very against that episode, but as all democratic organizations go, we voted, and that person was voted down. And that was fun for me. I had a lot of
Yeah.
fun shutting down Father Gregory, who's a hater and doesn't like boats, water, the ocean,
Or
or
boating.
boating.
That episode still gets, like, the dean of the business school at Catholic University came to me and said, "I love that episode. Would you like to go on a date with me?"
Yeah.
That was a good episode.
That's when I learned that votes can be cast ironically, spitefully, and mirthfully all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like
From
the
the
votes
same
weren't. It's like they weren't cast against me, but they were cast against me. They
Mhm.
weren't cast unseriously, but they were cast unseriously. It was just like I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I know that I'm losing, and I guess I'll have to consign myself to my fate. Father Patrick, given your vast experience of both boats and boating, that is to say, the moral superiority of what is it? Did you argue for like motorboats over sailboats, and Father Bonaventure associated the latter with like the collapse of civilization or something like that? Regardless, I'm abandoning
Yeah.
this transition and asking if you have a fun light.
It was a pretty clear argument. He said, because I prefer speedboats, I hate the Virgin Mary. So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, that was a direct quote.
That was
If
the
you
inference, and then he committed to it, so it's modus ponens.
so if you haven't listened to that episode, it's pretty fun. But yeah, so one of my fun lights was when we first shifted the model of recording to studio sessions.
Yeah.
And we got out of the tin can internet and were able to hang out with each other for a few days. We first tried that in New Hampshire, and that was a great experience. Just to be together, it greatly improved the experience of the podcast in my own view. So it took something that was fun and had become kind of difficult to maintain, actually, with all the scheduling we were trying to do. For me, it brought that back, and so it was definitely a fun night, I would say.
Father Joseph Anthony,
Yo,
where you at?
I be here in Charlottesville still, but
That was a spiritual where you at when it comes to fun lights.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
When we talk about
Good.
fun lights, it's actually really similar to Father Patrick's. Is when we moved over to the studio, scheduling, block recording, all that kind of fun stuff. But for me, it was like actually when we moved down to Washington D.C. Like we basically did a test run in New Hampshire, and it seemed to work. And it seemed like, okay, we might be able to pull this off. And then we kind of just invested in the setup and in the studio side of things, which I love the production side of things. And it gave me the ability to start to tinker with things and to reset it all and get a bunch of gear and stuff like that. So that's been really a lot of fun, and it continues. And I'm always kind of tinkering around with the production side of it all. So I really, really love to be able to do that and to enjoy it. And that's been just, it's a lot of fun to have an opportunity to kind of utilize this podcast and that platform for that really odd, weird hobby that I have.
So the good part about New Hampshire was that we got to cool down the cameras with bags of ice.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
On top of them? And you can actually see, dear viewer, some remnants from the New Hampshire experience. If you look at Father Jacob-Bertrand, one, him, but two, the stand behind him, the bookcase there, which looks very similar. We don't transfer that every time we record. There's actually two almost identical ones that differ only in some sort of material composition issues.
Right.
True.
And he has retained possession of those bags of ice as a living memorial. That is to say, a melting memorial of
Melting
our first
memorial, for
Godsplaining
sure.
recording session.
Yeah,
Dude, that
bags
was
of ice
so
on top of
janky.
electronic things. That was really cool. that was when it hit high gear. Like that's Mednim, literally high gear. Yeah.
That was such a janky setup, but like we made it work, and it was hilarious.
Yeah. If the contents of the bag don't get you, the condensation will. That's what we learned.
Yeah.
Thinking of fun, I recount an episode about George Orwell, literature and George Orwell, in which I forgot what it was like to ugly laugh. So you know how there's like the distinction between cute cry and ugly cry. It's like cute cry is like a single tear. It elicits a kind of warm feeling on the part of the beholder, whereas an ugly cry is like mascara runs, racking sobs are heard, people distance themselves because they can't bear to hear. So there's a similar distinction between laughs where it's like there's like the tee hee hee kind of chuckle, giggle, whatever else, and people are like, what mirth in the building. And then there's the ugly laugh, which causes the individual to so gasp for air as to lose his bearings and his kind of like connection with the exterior world. And Father Bonaventure, in recounting the difference between toads and lizards taking up the gifts at the offertory, and then describing the divine favor and then the lack of divine favor apropos of said theme occasioned. I'm responsible. I choose to be bound by these laughs. Caused one of the first instances in my life of an ugly laugh. Like it was bad. It was real bad.
So funny. I remember like being
You actually
in the
hear
studio.
Father Joseph Anthony laughing on it as well. Everyone lost
I think
it.
if you go back to that,
I got a
like, you
rebound
could
laugh.
hear me in the background just losing it as well, because
It was spectacular.
at that point it was all gone. Like you can't help it. It was just everything got torpedoed. But that was
Souls
one
from
of
bodies.
the most joyful moments. It was so funny.
I also, like, apropos of fun lights, which is to say weird lights, which is to say actually low lights, but we're not calling it that. I remember when we used to record a lot of these things remotely, every time the software changed, like the service provider tinkered with something on the back end, we just lose a bunch of footage and it would cause unending woe. And there was one time where I troubleshot a problem semi-continuously for 36 hours. Obviously, I went to sleep and I went to prayers and meals. But in the interim time, I think I troubleshot a computer problem for like 14 and a half hours. And at the end of it, I felt so desolate that I considered discontinuing my graduate studies. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but
it was
bad.
better. But it was better than actually doing the graduate work. Folks, that is what it means to write a dissertation. When 36 hours of troubleshooting a silly video feed issue actually beats out doing dissertation work. That's what dissertations are like.
Amen. Alleluia. Okay, so transitioning then into our third and final segment of this here, All of the Lights. We thought we could do some hope lights, which again is another made-up word that we have cobbled together for the purposes of our own hilarious manipulation. But Father Jacob-Bertrand, do you have any hope lights?
I was hoping not to go first.
Well, that affords me the opportunity to ask someone else while you meditate on the theme. Father Joseph Anthony, hope lights?
Yeah, I was hoping that you wouldn't ask me first. No. Yeah, I think hope lights for it is I'm excited about a lot of the guests that we have coming up and to watch how those guest interviews continue to evolve. I remember when we first kind of pitched that idea, I think our first guest episode was with Sarah Kroger. It was me and Father Patrick. And that was just like a real sticking our neck out on the line. But seeing how it's evolved over the years, like I think that's one of the really interesting aspects of the podcast is the different guests that we have on and the different voices that we have. So I think my hope is just to continually watch that segment or that part of the podcast continually grow. And I'm excited for it. So yeah, I think if we're talking about hope lights for the podcast is just that, like that guest side of it all. Is really exciting to me.
Just so you know, listeners, we occasionally send very ambitious guest, what would you call them, invitations on the kind of song and the prayer that the people might respond, not realizing that Godsplaining isn't too terribly serious of a project, although it is accredited now and we do grant certificates honoris causa. But we're still waiting on replies from Jordan Peterson and from Harrison Butker and from others besides. So if you want to let us know as to people whom we should invite, keep us posted / email us. Father Patrick, do you have a hope light?
I want to go to Australia. And I want to recreate the picture of John Paul II cuddling a koala bear for Godsplaining.
Yeah.
I've heard those things aren't nice, actually. It's a risk.
I've heard similar things.
Much
well,
better
then
trying
I'll
to
punch a kangaroo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
There it is. Yeah. We'll take that. We'll take that
And
too.
pet a dingo.
Nice.
But not with your
dingo.
I'm not getting anywhere near Australia. They have too many
And
poisonous
restore
snakes.
coral reef. Right.
Like I don't deal with snakes at all, and they have like 90% of the world's poisonous snakes, and I want nothing to do with that. I made up that fact. I don't know if it's real, but
It's all
no,
right.
I'd rather go to the Shire in New Zealand. Just saying. Maybe we could do an episode in the Shire.
Okay.
But
All right, folks, so
Godsplaining Down Under. Come on. Who doesn't
Godsplaining
want
Down
that?
Under. Yep, Godsplaining expanding to the southern hemisphere at the invitation of those who intend to pay for these travels on account of that they will not happen otherwise. Although I've heard that just maybe it's something with marsupials, because I've heard that the kangaroos are somewhat violent as well. Like public transportation in Australia, I think on the buses, they have these contraptions out the front of the bus that angles down so that if a kangaroo were to cross their paths at high speeds, that it would get like forced under the bus rather than jumping through the windshield. So they're called rhubars. I think that's all true. I didn't make any of that up. So we'll be looking forward to our Australian tour, during which we have the opportunity to contend violently with marsupials. Against that imaginative backdrop, Father Jacob-Bertrand, any hope lights?
Well, I was going to say Australia too.
Nice.
So,
well, Australia's taken, New Zealand's taken, Papua New Guinea is not yet taken. If you would like to take another,
no offense, but no,
none taken.
No.
The Solomon Islands, we can go Oceania more broad. No, okay.
No.
The Philippines.
No. No, my desire to travel has waned, or the scope of where I would the scope of where I would go to has become much smaller as I've aged.
Yes.
So
that's the theme of this episode.
I would go to Australia. I would hope for that.
Nice.
That's probably it.
It's just Australian death, folks.
I would probably go to Antarctica.
Really?
Yeah.
Father Bonaventure, your thoughts on Antarctica?
Few things. One, there is a Marion statue on a base in Antarctica.
Good.
It's the only like Marion statue on any army base, but it happens to be there because of someone who fell through the ice and was a Catholic or something. That's interesting.
In no other army base in the world is there a Marion statue.
I mean, there almost certainly is, but I was present when the person told us the story, and that was the claim. So we can only pass it on in good faith.
Aren't there Catholic churches on military bases with Marion statues?
But I think it's not like stat. The claim sounds plausible because like a permanent fixture outside. Don't you think so?
No.
Have you been on army-based chaplains? They're all the chaplaincies are really like non-denominational. So everything's movable, but like a permanent Catholic statue. That sounds sounds plausible. It sounds plausible.
All right. Let's massage this claim so it's true.
Second thing though, is Father Joseph Anthony. This is more to you.
Okay,
so
I'm back.
Is New Zealand like Australia for you in terms of lack of desirability?
No, I would love to go to New Zealand.
Okay.
Like New Zealand's very attractive to me. Australia is not.
Right, and you said the Shire, right?
Yes. That's where they filmed the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, good. I was wondering if that was the case. Yeah, I was wondering. Yeah, so with New Zealand. Okay, folks, there it is. Why? Yeah, I never thought Australia was different than New Zealand. But Father Gregory also has that great expression on his face right now. Okay, so I'm going to assume. Actually, you didn't ask me about the hope lights here, but
go for it.
All right, fine, I will.
Come, now is the time to hope light.
I don't know. Do
you want to bump that certificate up to an associate's degree?
No, I hope. Well, I'll tell you what. I hope to do another day of recollection at some point because I thought that was fun, and it was neat to meet people who had no idea about what Godsplaining was, but were meeting us. Because most of our retreats are people who have heard the episodes or something like that and know about us coming to it. But we were in a day of recollection in Columbus, Ohio, and a bunch of people were like, cool, you guys are great. Where would I find more about you? That kind of thing. Like, that was really cool. Like, it was nice to meet new, we love our audiences, of course, and our normal community. But it was nice to meet people who joined as well who just never heard of us before, which is great. And we just, generally meeting people, you don't always experience that, at least some of the retreats. There's like two kinds of retreats. There's like newcomers and community retreats or something. But I thought that was cool.
Yeah. I think that's probably my hope light is to meet people. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we talk on the podcast about making the digital community a real community. Not to say that digital things aren't real at all, but they're less real than in-person things. And, sometimes it's not always clear the best way by which to go about that because you can only have so many retreats / days of recollection in the course of the year before your limbs just start falling off from overexposure to the interior of airplanes. That actually doesn't happen. Never mind. But yeah, it's good to meet people. It's good to meet listeners, and it's good to make of the digital community something more real, more in person. So finding ways by which to do that is always exciting. So look forward to the next World's Fair hosted by Godsplaining in Chicago at the site of the last Chicago World's Fair coming your way. Father Jacob-Bertrand, your thoughts on a World's Fair or any final thoughts for this episode?
I read a book once
Good.
about
We
the
love
World's
that.
Fair in Chicago, and America's first serial killer.
Yeah, white. It was kind of like White Devil in the City or something.
right? Yeah.
Devil in the White City. Devil in the White City.
Yeah,
Right?
it's a great book.
Yeah. Okay.
Tremendous.
Godsplaining recommendations.
Tremendous. Okay, so look forward to an upcoming Literature and the Devil in the White City episode as a kind of ominous portent of what will happen once we hold our biggest in-person. Now, that sounds like a veiled threat. We don't intend any of that. We just intend celebration on account of the fact that it's our 5th anniversary. Father Patrick, any final anniversary thoughts?
5th year, best year.
5th year, best year. What about the 6th year? Thoughts? Bestest?
A little too hopeful. Bester, I think.
Bester. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. And Father Joseph Anthony, any last commendations, excitements, blah, blah, blahs?
No, I'm just, it's a weird, shocking, weird place to be to think that we've done this for 5 years now, and it still feels like we're still trying to find our way through it and make it up as we go, type of a thing. You would think that we'd have it down for after 5 years of doing it, but I still feel it still has a certain freshness of like, yeah, we're just making this work and having fun with it. So I keep wanting to have fun with it, and I hope our listeners keep having fun with it. So yeah, have fun with it.
Father Bonaventure, any final non sequiturs or sequiturs?
Yeah. Folks, I don't know what you've heard, but Suarez is a boss. Francisco Suarez. This is like 900 pages of selections from a bunch of his legal
Oh
stuff.
my gosh, mute him.
And it's because
He's
it's
done.
funded by Liberty Fund, which is like a libertarian group. It's like $10. And when you read Suarez, I don't know what people solid. So seriously, Francisco Suarez, top notch.
Also, great hat. So, with the remaining time that you have on the internet today, be sure to look up Francisco Suarez, admire his hat, and that can be a kind of going away present from this here episode. All right, folks, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Godsplaining. Please follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, maybe TikTok, depending on your local jurisdiction. Like the episode, subscribe on YouTube or your podcast app, and leave a 5-star review, all of which we are told helps to influence the almighty algorithm. Almighty with a lowercase a in a subordinated sense. We would never blaspheme. If you'd like to donate to the podcast through Patreon, you can do so by following the link in the description and our show notes. There, you'll also find links to shop merchandise and get information for upcoming Godsplaining events, including upcoming Days of Recollection, at least one of which is posted. At least I think it is. If not, it's bound to be soon. All right, know of our prayers for you. Please pray for us, and we'll look forward to chatting with you next time on Godsplaining. Father Jacob-Bertrand.
Father Gregory.
A Dominican, a Franciscan, and a Jesuit walk into a bar. One of them asks the audience to subscribe. That's not a joke. Any ways you can improve upon it?
Just don't tell jokes.
Right. This is not a joke. Please subscribe. Cheers.